a look at what's happened since Wednesday of last week with the FOMC basically breaking the reflation trade, but not really changing reflation itself. So this is a really good point. Reflation as a macro trend is intact. I mean, the Federal Reserve just can't wave that away. But the reflation trade was weakening in front of the last Wednesday meeting, was weakening in front of the Fed. And it'd be nice if I could type here of the FOMC, and broke last Wednesday. So then the question is, are there corners of the market that this reflation trade is coming back? I don't think we're going to see it sector-wide. All right, I don't think we're going to see it sector-wide. In other words, the SLX, which is a play on steel that we were looking at since mid-May. We've been here in the futures room. That was a premium video looking at this since mid-May. Meaning we were talking about pullbacks back in here, and clearly that was a nice little move. Then the reflation trade got absolutely annihilated, but you've seen SLX come back. But let me remind everybody, look at the JT trend, specifically the second row, the lower row, right in here. That beautiful double green that we had through here, and then we had all through here, was broken. Now, you might say, but Rog, we've broken this before. Yes, but this break now was courtesy the FOMC and a message shift. And unlike this break in here, which remained blue, this break in here went red. And you can see that subtly, but there in the top row, where we were double yellow, as opposed to what happened here, where the top row of our JT multi, the way in which we assess the trending or non-trending environment of the market, went red. I like to color code everything for a really good reason. Now you think of people who have to make decisions at high speed really quick. I love this picture here of the cockpit of a Ferrari SF90. Take a look at this thing. Look at the color coding of all that stuff. Okay, this thing almost looks like a toy, and yet we know these are super high performance vehicles. Well, I think there's some benefit to that type of color coding. So it's hard to argue with. We know this with traffic lights, right? It's hard to argue with those types of shifts in color, because if you trust the process. So the process for me is a trust of the 8, 13, 21, and 34. You can really see the difference in how clear this tool here, the JT Multi, has told us the SLX is just not the same kind of pullback. However, let's take the next deep dive. Now, here's a great example of where ETFs for futures traders can be very, very helpful. Because we don't have steel futures, and yet this was a great corner of the market. We can't trade uranium futures, but for a really long time, URA and uranium stocks like CCJ were working great, right? So if you're a futures trader, think about the knock-on effect to certain corners of the market that you can take advantage of. Well, whenever a trend is broken, you've got to go back and reassess the way in which the structure of the market was able to withstand. As you can see here, let me get my color coded right there. Look at that pullback. Look at that pullback. Let's go back down to the JT trend. See that? I love my color coding. All right. So then I've got the pullback to the wave. As you can see here, so I got a nice pullback to a very supportive overall bullish wave. And then what I think is really, really helpful is that when I compare the other stocks, all right, when I compare the other stocks in the SLX ETF, things like MT, which I loved for a long time. Do you see the difference in structure? Now, CLF, VALE, and even borderline, this is probably my distant third favorite, STLD had either the least number of red grab candles, so bearish, and had no red grab candles. So notice even on the JT trend how good CLF looks. And notice on the JT trend how good VALE looks. That thing's double green. So if I'm looking at CLF, all right, if I'm looking at CLF, what I want to keep in mind is that we really want to pull back a little bit more before we get long, and the cue for that is going to go right back to our grab candles. And the reason for that is I don't have a great double green. Blue grab candles will usually tell me that my ideal entry is not going to be the more aggro top line of the wave. Doesn't have to be, necessarily super conservative, but I want to usually wait for the middle line of the wave to the lower line of the wave. This more, call it the lower half of my entry zone for the opportunity to get long CLF, which, by the way, again, just to remind everybody, why would CLF be interested to a futures trader? Because this is our proxy into steel via the ETF and the stocks that are most tethered to that narrative. And I think, on a Friday, we're talking about different topics. It's really neat to remember that when you understand futures, oh, by the way, I'd be remiss if I did not at least mention the gorgeous volume ledge. Look at all that volume. Volume is what? Volume is a certain amount of, commitment. It's opinion, right? And I love when we can get involved where the opinion is so strong. Anyways, when you understand futures, that knock-on effect to related stocks is really, really good. I mean, case in point, how much we're looking at, where's our breakdown of the energies? Yeah, how much we're looking at energies. And then if I can look at energies, as I call that knock-on, right? Or as I want to call the oil stocks, I will only call them once I understand what's happening with the underlying oil. So then that knock-on effect becomes OIH and XOP and XLE and FRAK, etc. And that's the same thing with CLF and SLX and that steel narrative. So I hope that makes sense, and it's something you'll think about where, yeah, it's beyond futures, but not really. Hey traders, Raghee from Simpler Trading. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like and a comment below. And remember, subscribe and click the bell icon so you'll get notified of the next update. And when you're ready to join me for live trading, be sure to head on over to simplertrading.com. I'll see you in the next update.